And we're back.
We see. Oh,
Good, thank God. Wait, no we don't.
no.
What is happening? Okay, if somebody has some... Wait, no, I feel like this is an elaborate tease.
No.
No.
Wait, can they hear us?
Can
Just exit out and redo it.
Okay, hang on.
BRB.
There's like a 12-second delay. Hang on.
A real BRB.
Audio/visual. Both! Okay.
Wait, does that mean that...
No, they have us. They're good. We're here. We're on. Hello, and welcome to Talking About Werewolves. I am Brian. Okay, if you can't see us, refresh. Everybody else, refresh.
Why don't you refresh so we can
That won't
see if it's working?
Okay. Everybody else, refresh. See, yeah, it's good. The stream is good.
Okay. Stream.
Because we had stopped and started, people need to refresh. So everybody refresh. We're good.
Okay.
Okay. Let's take them up.
Yeah, let's ease back into it. It's been a while. We
need
missed
to
each
pace
other.
each other.
Yeah.
This is good.
Sometimes you just need to take a moment.
Okay.
Explore.
Okay. Commercials are happening. I'm sorry, I can't help you about the commercials. Oh.
We just won't say anything important until everybody's already watched the commercial.
All right, so we're gonna give it 10 seconds for the commercials to finish. Cheers! All. I'm gonna enjoy my drink a little bit.
I'm gonna enjoy my drink. I'm currently sipping waters.
No, it's nice.
Yeah.
I'm classing it up with a little gin and orange juice. And by that I mean a lot of gin. A little bit of orange juice. I thought so.
Classic.
Yeah.
Classic.
Okay. All right. So, hello again. Welcome to Talking About Werewolves. I am Brian, ANST Apocalypse. With me is...
Bucky, as always, still wearing no official hat, but throwed that unofficial hat into a ring. That's terrible euphemism and metaphor. I'm running for BOD. We'll talk about that later.
And we are down somebody. Iggy's had some IRL problems tonight, but he is still a core member of our team, and we miss him dreadfully.
He's just really busy.
Yeah, he's just
busy. Like nothing bad happened.
No, nothing
You
bad.
made it sound like something.
Did it seem seemly?
It seemed like something was wrong. He's just mad busy.
Yeah. Everything's good.
You got much love.
Much love. So, it's been a few months. Things have happened, I see. Apparently there was a vote. There was a national event and a vote of some sort.
Democracy happened.
Democracy happened and ruined everything for everyone. Everyone hates democracy, apparently. It's pretty intense. Where do we want to start with that? We got a lot here. A lot on our plate. A lot to talk about tonight. We're at the 6-month mark of the Chronicle. We are 6 months in. Assuming this is a 3-year Chronicle, we are a sixth of the way through the story. Which means...
And if it's 4-year, I can't multiply fractions.
Yeah, let's just go with 3 because 4 would hurt my head with the fractions.
Okay.
But assuming your Campbellian arc, that means we are done with establishing normal. Establishing normal is over.
Do we have to meet a goddess next?
No, that's down here. That's like 7 o'clock. You meet the goddess? No.
It's been a while since I took a lit class. I'm sorry. I'm a grown-ass man.
This is core material. Okay, so... there are a few things on everybody's mind I see right now, and those things are both player-driven completely and player-driven tertiarily. So why don't we open up by talking about the Pharaoh vote?
Sure.
A few weeks ago, at the end of August, the vote that was opened up at MESCON to allow Farah full rights and privileges of members of the Garo Nation and be able to hold high offices in the nation, was shot down.
It was.
By the Silent Striders.
By a handful of Silent Striders.
Yes.
Which I think, and so Brian did, I saw your announcement stream, and I was like, is this live? Like an hour after he did it, because I'm not great at technology myself sometimes. And I thought you RP'd the surprise well, because the good thing about player-driven stuff is, once the votes were counted, staff found out who won.
Yeah, it was out of our hands.
Right, which is great, because it was like, it was one of those great moments where you got to see the people behind the curtain like running around being like,
I wanted to give a sense of the counselor NPCs of being like, oh my god, what the hell are we gonna do?
Yeah. Yeah.
But talking about the vote from an out-of-character perspective, it was important to us to make sure that there were more tribes that were neutral or in favor than against it. We wanted to make it somewhat balanced. Mm-hmm. That's why we made the Fianna and the Wendigo were pure 50-50s. So if the Fianna players or the Wendigo players had broken in favor of it, they could have broken with the Sanctum. But the players in the Sanctum spoke very clearly.
Yeah, it was mostly along party lines. I think the two surprises for me...
I thought the Fianna might go.
I thought the Black Fury were going to go.
The Black Fury seemed like they were really going to go.
And they were close-ish.
Well,
I mean, they
were
weren't
50,
super
when
far.
When the vote closed, the Black Furies were 50-50.
Yeah.
But for most of the time the vote was open, the Furies were hanging around 60%. So for most of the vote...
They only had to get to 75, though.
65.
Oh, 65.
Yeah. So they were hovering over... They came within one vote of overriding for most of the month. And then in the last, week and a half, the Fury players voted and crushed it.
Oh, okay. I didn't know that. Because I kept hearing Fury noise about that.
Yeah.
I'm a little surprised by the Striders, but a lot of it came down to how to vote as well as actually voting from what we discussed.
As has been made obvious to a lot of to the individual tribes, and to get a little bit more granular with it, it was very, very interesting that the people who opposed the vote, a very, very strong majority of them, did spend the extra renown to oppose the vote.
Even I did, even though there was 0% chance that the Red Talons were going to flip.
Right. The people who supported the vote, as a rule, did not spend renown. And
I think for most of that it didn't super matter, but in the tribes where it did matter, it mattered a lot.
Yeah. Can we blame the law structure not being able to modify the proposed law? Well, once a vote goes to the floor, it goes to the floor. You guys had... I can't say you guys. That's not correct to generalize. But the players at National crafted that over the course of their whole event, and they got that text out. But the important thing to remember, as we transition from talking about how the vote went to where to go from here, is to remember that by the voting structure that we gave you guys, 2 sets of counselor votes can be called per year. So if folks want to try for a different text, they
can do it 6 months from now.
Well, twice a year means they can do it now, or 11 months from now, or whatever.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah.
I mean, I would probably try to space them because you don't want to hammer the same thing that soon, because in the intervening time, I think there might be other things that people want to vote on.
I also think dramatically calling another vote now would be dramatically uninteresting, because it's right on the heels of everyone processing how the last vote went.
Right.
You want to give that some time to breathe dramatically.
I think players
but that's up to players
and their characters need time to process what happened and also think about how to deal with it. And I think part of it is giving people a chance to RP winning the hearts and minds of various things, and also the other players, or rather the other characters, the counselors, and by winning their hearts and minds, I also mean either controlling or murdering them. As someone not on staff,
we keep putting counselors in play, and people keep not killing them. So
they are super not legends. They've got a lot of XP, but they are mortal. They do bleed. You can kill them.
I would say that they're XP wise, the counselors are all built to be characters that could be PCs at End of Chronicle. They basically generally have around 3 years of XP on them, but that's still eminently takeable by a pack of Garo, I think.
Well, especially in BNS. I mean, if you're grossly outnumbered, and there's just fewer get-out-of-jail-free cards, especially with, there's less fewer get-out-of-jail-free, merits and stuff that you, there's more of that in Vampire. There's a lot of ways to survive or fair escape, a celerity gets silly, and a bunch of merits.
I think one thing that this vote did expose, though, not entirely to our benefit, although I think dramatically it is interesting, I do think a lot of people are having trouble, especially west of the Mississippi, is that games that were majority Farah and are still majority Farah feel just a bit fucked by this. Now, in so much as that's in character, I think that's great, but I do think there is the problem of people feeling like they can't run a game. And that is a real problem.
Yeah. I mean, I've got a bunch of feels about where I think the Farah fall in werewolf genre. I feel like, well, for the changeling addicts out there, they always seem like the non-she, like, parts of changeling.
Yeah.
Like, it is the werewolf story mostly. And being a Farah is, you're generally taking on being an outsider. And then
But the less outsidery this time. I mean, in Violent Society, werewolf.
Well, one, you could actually beat them. So that was a pretty big step in the right direction. But I think the other thing is, it's 6 months in to go from 0 to we can have our own sept alphas. To me, it seemed quick. I thought there would be more half measures along the way, but they voted all or nothing, and I feel like this is, of all of the things that could happen to upset the Farah and or their players, I think this is probably the best thing that can happen.
I will say that people have been a little bit salty about it, and when I hear the reasons, when I actually talk to people about it and go into detail, I understand where they're coming from.
I get it.
I mean, I totally get where they're coming from.
It's not like yeah, I get it.
Yeah. The question is, okay, let's say this. There are a series of in-character questions that, and this is speaking to the Farah players out there who feel really cut off and a little bit alienated right now. I would say there's a series of in-character questions you're not asking. For one, how does the Ahadi function, because that's given straight in the book, but how do seed cairns work with the Ahadi? What is the nature of the alliance of the Geru and the Ahadi? And, what's up with that? One thing I saw, player-wise, I think players are missing. You're just
no, I can't. I have to, like, really squint to read, because...
I can zoom.
Oh. Well, please do. That's so much better.
There you go. One thing... Oh, no, it's this little box. God damn you. Hang on. There you go. 110. That's what you get. One thing I think players are missing is that when you have a seed cairn, it is an express lane to the cairn it comes from. So if you have a cairn that has a seed from Silverterra, and you want to give that seed to a Farah, and you don't talk to the Fianna about it, maybe that's not setting yourself up for success, is what I'll say. I think people tend to think of seeds as more as just seeds that insta-cairns, just add water.
Right.
But when you give somebody an express lane to your house...
Well, there really is now basically one ultra cairn with multiple hearts, and it's like a pathing generated, well, I guess player generated sort of web.
Yeah.
And if you make those lanes, then there's going to be some tribes that are wondering why suddenly there's a freeway from the heart of their cairn that they have to protect to some other place and some other people.
Responding to a comment, the Ahadi leader kind of caught off an idea. That's right, the leader of the Ahadi isn't interested in helping you. There are still a couple thousand other shifters in Africa. I mean, there are options. I know that the Farah leader, the leader of the Ahadi, refused to help you guys. That's not us shutting it down. That's just that individual NPC saying, no, I'm not interested in getting involved. That NPC knows how Geru politics goes and wants absolutely no part of it.
I think that's a legitimate stance.
Yeah, but to finish my point though, like, if the Pharaoh wants seeds,
it certainly appears like they do.
They certainly do. One thing I will say is, by canon, I know you're not complaining. I'm just contextualizing. Another thing I will say is that the Pharaoh have already been given seeds by a certain tribe of Geru in a certain faction of Geru, and there's no reason that couldn't happen again. In fact, there's one group of Pharaoh who I'm not sure why they're so salty, given that they actually have seed cairns that they've been given, but that's neither here nor there.
Both me and my character only found that out. Also, just to segue what's new, I don't know if it's on our list, but the APOC Sabat campout was great.
In New Jersey, there was also another campout just this weekend.
Oh, okay.
Everyone shat their heart, just like at our campout. People found out about EOS and shat their hearts out, which was nice.
What was EOS?
EOS. Eat Our Souls.
Oh yes, okay. Well, that is on our list of things to discuss. But it's good seeing Korax getting the message out, doing their Korax thing.
That's one thing I saw that I thought was great, because I don't have a lot of Farah in my local game, and a lot of games I travel to, basically, spoiler, is that a lot of games on the East Coast are a little Farah light compared to other places, and I don't often get out to the West Coast games. I only hear about them secondhand. But seeing the Korax and the Korax players, and the Coelacanth players to a lesser extent, who I had less contact with them, was great, because they really committed to what their Farah was all about.
Yeah,
it's really awesome.
They're definitely embracing their denouement.
Yeah, so props to that. But yeah, the thing is, if it's a question, breaking it down, if it's a question of having a seed cairn in your local game, that is in many ways an already solved problem. If you look into what I see, if it's a question of having renown-giving institutions in your local game, that is a more difficult question if you don't really have Garu. And that's something we're looking at seriously. That's all I can really say on that. We're following player action, and we're looking at it seriously.
Well, I think that's the most important part, and I think that's part of the reason why a lot of the anger was, at least from what I was seeing on like Facebook and boards and listservs, was it's a very liquid sort of anger because the players voted. There was a lot of like, I'm just angry at this situation, as opposed to just literally blaming the other players, which is, I mean, technically more correct. You can be like, I'm mad at other players for not doing what I want them to do. Bunches did. I think somebody pointed out that it was reminiscent of the 2016 actual election, so that raised some bad memories.
Yeah, I didn't love that. We saw that on staff the moment we saw the vote came through, and we're like, oh, we don't want to go down this well either, but unfortunately, the story tells itself sometimes. The last thing I really have to say about the Farah stuff is there are groups within the Farah. Talking about the Farah as a block is a mistake. I mean, the Korax and the Rokea have a very...
It is not stable enough for you to hit the table.
Oh, wow, look at that.
Yeah, don't do that.
Yeah. I would say the Rokea and the Korax have a very different relationship to the Garu Nation in parts than other Farah do. So I think it's a mistake to pretend that they're a monolith.
Yeah, they've always been treated like a monolith. And I don't think anybody... I can't say that. I don't know if anybody has been doing the sort of brinksmanship of splitting off individual Farah groups, because there's an incredible amount of political might if a Farah group says, F all the other Farah, we'll just join as like, either we'll join the Sanctum or we'll join as a junior member with like no power, but any movement of any Farah to the Sanctum is a huge political coup.
You know, the other thing I haven't seen, this is a storyline I haven't seen, but this is have to be player driven. I have no idea how it would resolve. What if the Korax, as a group, said we want to join the Garu Nation as a full tribe? What if the Korax walked in the door that day? I don't know how that would go. And that's really, I can only see the Korax doing that. I couldn't see any of the other shifters joining as a group. But the Korax is a really interesting case.
I could see some. I mean, I also think what would happen if the Korax decide that they're going to pick their favorite tribe, or whoever treats them the nicest, and it's like, well, we'll just work for them until we get full integration. Like, what is that even? Like, that is a bombshell to the political landscape.
Yeah.
I would like to see more aggressive inclusion by the Kitsune. Because, I mean, plot-wise, they're the only Farah that, like, their own boss was like, I was wrong, the Garu were right, the end is nigh, do something.
That would be a cooler thing to see Kitsune very strongly, like,
well,
guys, we literally, our God came to us and said the world is ending.
Right, our Bible is lies.
Also, that's what we've believed for thousands of years, is that the world ending is absurd and could never happen.
Right.
I would love to see a Kitsune playing that a little harder.
Well, right, there is... The Kitsune, I feel like, have this core concept of absolute desperation. They have abandoned and made a ton of enemies in leaving their digs and trying to join up with the Garu because they're under the impression that they're correct and that like, this is the fight, and if they lose this fight, the Garu Nation will fall, all of the nations will fall, everybody's boned. I never get that sense of urgency from them. But again, I don't actually see everybody RPing,
Right.
so I have no way of knowing whether or not that actually happens.
Yeah, I'm not pushing any particular playstyle on any particular player. I'm just saying it's just something that interests
As
me.
an aggregate.
Yeah, as an
They're the
aggregate.
only ones who are like, we have to help the Gera, or it's all
It's
all
all done.
over.
It's all over. Or even worse, it's just all over.
Right.
I mean,
right.
a completely
That's what I thought.
fatalistic Kitsune is scary. That's a scary character. That's a character I would like to see.
To be fair, I haven't seen that many
Yeah.
Kitsune.
Not locally, they are fairly popular nationally, though. So moving on, taking sort of a 1,000-mile look down at the what's going on in the Chronicle right now. You're reading. It's good.
I'm just catching up because like when you guys type things, Brian can see you apparently, but I have to.
You know, we're like equidistant from. You need glasses, man.
I really don't. That is very tiny.
No, you need glasses.
That's nonsense. I've been to the eye doctor not that long ago. I'm fine.
Yeah,
Got
now it's in the
20/10
middle.
vision.
Now it's actually equal between us. Okay, I can see it. You can see
Well,
it.
now I can read it without craning.
That's good. That's good. So taking sort of the 1,000-mile view of the Chronicle, the Chronicle narrative, I hope, is starting to become a little more apparent to people about where we're going with this free show. So some things have been revealed about the national storyline that have gone out in the songs and story lists, so I can talk about them a little more openly now. And that's that Eater of Souls is free, which, if you're a longtime player of Werewolf the Apocalypse, should fucking terrify you. Also, Eater of Souls has been free, not like last month, but like 15 years ago. Eater of Souls has been free for like a long time, and no one noticed.
Well, I mean,
Not that, and not, I'm not saying anyone was
I don't
confident.
think- I do-
The Croatan didn't report in to let them know that it didn't work out. No, the Croatan have been strangely quiet about the whole thing.
weird.
Yeah.
Weird. Irresponsible of them,
Yeah.
I think.
And I'm really, actually, in a lot of ways, curious to see what the players do with this information. Like, how do they react? How do they begin to investigate and look into what can be done? And
Yeah.
but also on that second level, what has already happened? Because if you go back to 2002, you're talking about basically the entire Age of Apocalypse.
Yes.
The entire Age of Apocalypse really starts at around that timeline. That's when the Storm Eater goes nuts. That's when the Karen Plague begins.
Mm-hmm.
So all that shit goes crazy. Gaia goes silent shortly after that. All those things, those could be related to Eater of Souls, or they could not be. So,
Right, but it colors the narrative.
Yeah.
Either way,
Mhm.
any reasonable Gera or Farah who hears that, who has even a smidgen of like worm lore or whatnot, should be like, okay, this is a fact that now puts things into perspective. Whether or not it's directly related to everything is still an open question.
for those of you who are not familiar with Storm Eater, or in Ravnos' case, don't give a fuck about the the Eater of Souls, Eater of Souls. The big deal with the Eater of Souls, it's what's driving goal, and this is pure the books. There's no spoilers here. Eater of Souls is the part of the Triadic worm that's most like the Weaver, in so much instead of organizing everything, it wants to bring order to the universe by destroying everything. It's very much Nefandi-esque. Its goal is to get rid. Look, creation happened.
Well, it's got the Nefandi party line.
Yeah.
This was all a really good try.
Yeah.
This was a noble experiment, but we should pull the plug. The patient is sick, and existence is pain. It's a cross between like the Nefandi, the Meeseeks, and the just general worm insanity.
It is in every source I can find about Eater of Souls, though. It is not sentient. It is like, as we often say when we're talking about things at the power level of the worm, it is not sentient. It doesn't go out for a cup of coffee. It doesn't have a personality. It is like entropy. It is a basic part of the nature of the galaxy of the universe that is trying to make the universe not exist. It is the collapse of the quantum vacuum. It is bad times.
The Eater of Souls is, and the reason it has that, one of the reasons I always thought that it had sort of that great name for it is you could describe it as a word and then follow it with by the Eater of Souls. So you can be like, it is nihilism, the Eater of Souls. It is hopelessness, the Eater of Souls. Like, it is this high concept
Despair,
that it's like,
the Eater of Souls.
this all needs to not be.
Yeah.
And it ties in with things like Harana.
Eater of Souls and Storm Eater are different things.
Yeah.
This is another common misconception. Storm Eater is what ate all the Karens in the beginning of the Age of Apocalypse. It was also the thing that was bound back in the end of the 19th century, at the end of Geru Wild West. Not canon anymore, but that part of it is. So that's Storm Eater. Storm Eater was a badass Bane, but at the end of the day,
just a Bane.
well, it's Bane.
I mean,
It's Bane incarnate. It's a scary Bane.
Big Bane.
But Bane. No, this is 2 levels higher because you got the Maja and then she's like 2 levels higher. This is
it's the penultimate highest.
Yeah, it's a third of the worm itself.
Right.
Yeah. So they're very different. Yeah. There are a lot of questions I hope PCs start asking. There are a lot of gotta stop tapping. No tapping.
No, I mean, I'm not disagreeing with that.
Yeah.
I just think there's a lot of players, and I think they're doing a lot of asking. We, I will say collectively, don't get to see everything. You get to see way more than I do. Like I had to find out.
But it also means I can say less.
Right.
Because I see everything, I'm very limited in what I can say.
I see
Whereas
basically
you say very
nothing.
you see what a player sees.
Yes.
Which means
I found out about this at the camp out, and I was like, what have you been up to, you scamp? I'm not on any of those emails. I don't see anything. But it was neat. And it's also neat seeing what sort of paper walls my character is behind by hearing other conversations. Also, using wolf senses is like Aspects 1, just to be able to hear people is something I was doing because everything was crowded and loud. But then I was like, I could be doing this all the time just to listen in on conversation. I was like, well, why don't more people do this? I don't see a lot of people just sit. And then I was doing it, then other people started doing it. I was like, good, set that trend. This is how you can find out what else is going on in your game. Or at an event, you can just be like, I can't hear what they're saying.
Yeah.
Let me just go over and do one of these.
So I think if you're looking for Eater of Souls to be taking direct action, you probably won't see it. It's been around for a while. Unless the Doomsday Clock really goes down the toilet. Like, if you guys blow it by, like, 2 minutes and we hit, like, 58 or something, you might see direct action, but I think otherwise you're looking at indirect nature of the world sort of stuff. So I think that's the sort of things you should be looking into. I guess that's really all I can say about that.
Oh, no, I mean, I want to agree with that comment. I think it should be the most popular out of Tribe because paying 6 instead of 4 is basically nothing. And it is something that basically every werewolf should have.
Out of Hospice.
Out of Hospice, right. You should have wolf senses. It is so good in so many different ways. And it has synergies, and it's just fantastic. But yeah, I just wasn't seeing a lot of people doing the ear thing, but I really couldn't hear, so I was just like, F it, I have wolf senses. I'm just sitting right next to them, being like, I can't hear you.
So, between that and I know a lot of people are actively looking into what was up with the eclipse. So I think as those answers come out, I must not remember the name of the one for the Destruction of the Bat People. Pretty sure that's Storm Eater. Pretty sure Camel Toes was destroyed by the Storm Eater.
Is that how you say that?
It is now.
That doesn't sound right.
Camel Tots?
I don't know, but it's not Camel Toes.
There's a silent T. Okay.
Alright, refocus.
So I mean, that's my view from like 1,000 miles up. Is like, there's a chronicle narrative forming. There's an IC player narrative forming. And I think as long as we're having a good time with that, I think that's pretty awesome. I just hope we can manage bleed and get through that. And then talking about managing bleed moves into our next topic, which is that a lot of people sign up for Werewolf specifically because they want a PvE experience. They want to fight monsters and work together with people. And we're not doing anything to take that away, of course. But we are also, I think, starting to enter an environment where I think you could see more player versus player action for political reasons. What do you think of that?
Well, I mean, I've got a fair number of thoughts. I got to tell them to other players. Most of Werewolf is a PvE driven game.
At the end of the day,
nobody is playing the Talons of the Worm. Like, those aren't PCs. They're never going to be PCs. That's not like a thing, right? So it's not like a Ventru versus like Bruja type of issue where you're going to have
those people.
You're going to have rooms full of PCs on each side of an issue. There is no convention of just the BSD players.
I think if you could frame the PvP elements in Werewolf, it would be the desire to fight the PvE problem their way and in their sense. Like it's really more of perspective.
Well, it's who gets okay. So it's what it always reminds me of is sort of World War II, a little bit in World War I, but a lot of World War II politics of the clash between generals and each other, of say like the Allied forces.
Oh, I like that. Expound on that. I like that as a metaphor.
Well, I mean, when you're dealing with like Patton and I was just about to say his name with an M.
Montgomery?
No, not Montgomery. The
Monty, the English general.
No, I was talking about the other American general. Okay, I'm completely blanking on it.
Bradley. Monty. Yeah, I said Monty.
What's the other one?
Just use
anyway,
an
it doesn't
example.
matter.
Yeah.
You had a lot of, for lack of a better term, big personalities running a war, and they did not agree on things.
They didn't agree how to fight them.
MacArthur.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, the difference between MacArthur and Patton was stark, I would
or
say.
Eisenhower and Patton.
Or anybody in Patton. Because Patton was a monster. He was very good at war, but he was a monster. And at no point should it ever be described that Patton wasn't on the same side as, like, the United States. And their general goal, defeat the Germans, defeat the Japanese, win World War II. Like, even the people who hated him the most weren't like, well, he's not in this to win this. Obviously, they're all in it to win it. And they're all ostensibly on the same side. But that didn't stop the incredible amount of vitriol and, like, bile between these people and their letters and historical notes and just how they treated each other.
Right.
And I think you don't have players in those positions yet, but they're not that far down.
You have players who are very high-ranking officers who are leading like whole giant armies. They're just not people in the big room.
If you were an elder or even an athro of your tribe, and you're also, say, a sept leader, right? If you're an elder sept leader of your tribe, there's really only one person above you.
Also,
that's your counselor.
Do you know what really confused players for a moment, and it was kind of great to see?
What?
When you had an elder PC, and the counselor came into the room and he greeted him as such and such youth.
Yeah.
Like,
well, that's a good use of the term, even though it's like using those.
Use the term is not right, but it does hammer home to the players who tend to play elders. Holy shit!
Yeah, we're at the same
level.
rank.
We are at the same rank.
You just won an election.
Yeah.
Or a duel. Depends on how
you are a heartbeat away from sitting in their seat. You are the same rank. Like, and I think
if one of them vanished tomorrow, it would be one of the players. They'd all look at each other and be like, "Oh, which one?" Like on their own emails, or which one of us is an elder? Who's getting this job?
Right.
And then they would have to hash it out on the quick, so they actually had somebody in the seat.
Yeah.
Like that's how close players are to that position.
Literally a heartbeat away.
And it is very different than being like.
Well, kowtowing to a 4th gen.
Right, like, I'm a 7th gen or even a 6th gen, and there's like a 4th gen that you're not allowed to be because of the genre, basically.
Yeah.
You're just not allowed to be on their level.
Yeah.
This is just way different player experience, and I long for the day players rise up and just dash down their NPC leadership.
But zooming back to PvP, I think one thing you see when you have that fierce emotion and that conflict is you're going to see players combating each other. It's just going to happen. There are players who are going to physically fight with each other. There are going to be kill boxes in this Chronicle. It's going to happen. There's no way around it. It's not going to be as many as a vampire game. It is a primarily PvE game, but those PvP elements are so baked in, there's really nothing to be... it's just part of the game.
Yeah, well, I think that... Here's the other thing, and I think a large part of it is vampire. The idea that...
And a reaction to vampire, why a lot of players play werewolf instead of vampire.
Right, but there is a lot of overlap. I think most werewolf players also play vampire. Let's say you were the clan head, or whatever, right? And somebody else was going to replace you. In vampire. Well, I say clan.
Yeah, I was just making sure.
Right, so let's say you're the clan head, and somebody's going to replace you. Normally in Vampire that will require a kill box or some other type of scenario where you get to take the seat and are utterly secured, almost always with the other person dead. In Werewolf, it is part of basically the religion. It's in the litany that if like somebody takes the Auspice Council position from somebody else, they're going to be like, I actually have to respect that. Like, that is part of the core concept of the litany, is, oh, you're now above me. All right. well played.
Yeah.
Like there's a lot more possibility to either control them or to replace them without necessarily having to murder face
That
everybody
former one
above
is
you.
one I'm not seeing, by the way, at all.
Control or replace?
Control. A lot of people think
I don't think
in long
anybody's tried to.
I don't think
control
anyone's
them.
going for the control game.
I
don't
keep
think anyone's
saying
going
it.
for
I'm
the
like,
control.
please, just try to manipulate these people. They're immortal. They have needs. They're like,
They
just
have families.
they-
A lot of them are related to
be
you.
ashamed of something happened to all your kinfolk.
Uh,
That might be a little ham-fisted.
Well, remember, given the VIP system, a lot of players are directly related to them.
That's
And
true.
it's not just like, this dick is my kid.
If this
That's
will
my
charge,
son.
If this will
That is
charge your
different.
mom,
Yeah.
just tell you could be like, hey, I think it's time for a change in leadership, and then she might tear you apart. But whatever. Red Town's probably not a great example.
Red
of
Town
that.
is not a great example.
They
That
have
is
to
not
just
solid.
throw
No,
them and hope that you
that's
win.
not the right example.
But there is a lot of other. There's a lot of wiggle room in a lot of tribes.
But when we're talking about PvP, I think one thing, and I talked about this with some players at the Philly campout, and I think it's something we really need to hammer home, not actually with players, although players need perspective on this, is that storytellers need to be meaner.
Oh yeah. No, this is
It's a huge problem. I mean, I wouldn't say it's a huge problem. I can't generalize it, but I do see it everywhere, and that's storytellers pulling punches because they're afraid of killing PCs, or afraid of party wiping. But the problem is that when you're trying to avoid the party wipe because you end up fighting with one hand behind your back, you end up not accomplishing anything.
well, okay. A couple of things happen.
Yeah.
Here's
Not
one.
talking specifics, but just in general.
No. And we saw some of this in the game, and we got to use it, and we've seen it at the local level, we've seen it at the regional level, we've seen it on the national level. So this isn't casting aspersions at anyone specifically, and I think all STs have to wrestle with this as a concept, and how to implement it properly to make games better. If party wipes generally don't happen. The biggest,
I think storytellers should stop being afraid of party wipes.
right? If you kill a player character, right? The odds that the others aren't going to be able to book or escape or whatever is. There's a lot of ways to get out of combat and to flee with your life, or maybe even get your buddy with you. It can happen, but again, it is rare. It's usually something you have to commit to, right? Like
Well,
if the
also-
players are like, "We're all going to stand here and we're going to do this, or we're going to die," that's on them.
I think a lot of players also haven't, and storytellers, have not internalized how hard it is to kill a werewolf in the new system. It is fucking difficult to kill somebody.
Mostly because of Awakened Minor Spirit. Awakened Minor Spirit has made the entire game deeply problematic. It is a rank 2 power that requires an Elder Theurge power to basically sideboard against. But yeah, it should make everybody in this. The bad guys should have it too. Everybody should have their own healing cloud of gafflings that basically makes actual death impossible.
Well, the thing is, in large part, I think storytellers hold back just a little bit, while players have absolutely no motivation to ever hold back at all.
Well,
And that leads to situations where, I mean, I think storytellers who think they're playing completely fair end up having like a pack of BSDs get killed. But at the same time, a pack of players getting killed, a pack of PCs getting killed, that pretty much has never happened. As far as I know, it has never happened.
well, it's gotten close a lot, but I haven't.
But at the same time, BSDs should be the exact same power level as the players.
Exactly, and they really shouldn't be being killed on the same level that they are.
Yeah.
But here's the other thing. If you get used to that style of play, where you're generally outclassing your opponents because they've... most NPCs are, generally speaking, the way I've seen them, and this is a lot of things, people get very rushed. There's a lot of NPCs you have to juggle, and they don't all have sheets or even notes for them. So they're generally mostly naked. They're using inferior gear.
And
people don't have their full
They're
gift
not
list
min-max
memorized.
like player characters would be.
Right. They're just sort of generalized okay at what they're doing. And the SD has generally a game plan of what's going to happen. This makes it so when a player throws down,
This is what I'm saying.
they are utterly unequipped to deal with like an actual BSD who's ready to really use all the gifts in the world.
And the point I'm swinging back to here is that as a player, you should be demanding that your storytellers hit you as hard as they should be. Not because you want to die, but because you need to be tested against that level of opponent. Because when PvP comes around, you're not going to have somebody holding back.
Mm-hmm.
You're not going to have somebody fighting with one arm behind their back or juggling sheets. You're going to be fighting someone who knows the rules, and good chance they know the rules, and they're going to try to kill you.
Right, the bad guys won't inexplicably not have an army of spirits with them, even though all of you have an army of spirits with you. They won't inexplicably not know half their gifts.
So as a player who wants to have a badass PC, I think you should be demanding from your storytellers that they give you that level of challenge, because that trains you and prepares you out of character for a real PvP situation.
I mean, every werewolf you have to kill twice. If everybody in the party already died once, and that's the other thing about a total party kill, you got to kill them twice, right? Mm-hmm. Everybody gets a rage heal.
And the opponents too. People forget that too.
Well, right. If you have rage, you can rage heal.
That includes Fomori, doesn't it?
It does. They have rage.
Yes, it does. They have rage.
And they present. Well, they have. It depends on how they're.
I have honestly forgotten to give Fomori rage heals. I have admittedly done that. They have rage.
Or give them extra actions, which I see a lot. I see a lot of Fomori getting boot stomped, and there's really no reason that they should, as most of them right now should have more gifts than the PCs do.
Yeah.
Like, pretty handily. Especially Star.
Even a stock 5 probably has three gift chains.
Well, at least
maxed.
two.
2 or 3 gift chains maxed. Survival.
Well, it's not that they have the gift chain. They have every
That's
gift
what I'm saying.
of that type.
Which PCs don't have yet.
Which is nuts.
I see people. I see people like laughing off stock 4 and 5 NPCs, and I'm like, guys.
Yeah, if you have a stock 5 PC with like just armament gifts, or if you want to make them really crazy, just Ragabash, they will mess you up.
Lee, I would say anybody who wants to rage heal needs to have survival. I mean,
no, they wouldn't need the spec. They pretty much have all skills. It's reflected in their stock level. They just don't have all skills at 4. But you only need it at 1. It's the kind of thing where like they could still do a survival chop and it's not untrained.
Yeah. There was a ruling by rules team about stock NPC skill levels.
It's 2 and 4 now.
Yeah, I defer to that ruling because I don't know it offhand. I think Bucky says he does.
I think it's 2 and 4.
Okay, so in which case all NPCs would have rage heal then, because they all effectively have survival too.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
I don't know if they get like full benefits from that kind of stuff.
That's something I would need to check the fact for. I honestly didn't read up on it before this, so that's something I would have to know if I was going to run that fight. But yeah, in general, I think so. Let's some clarification. With summoning Gafflings, if you summon them and then you get knocked out, do the spirits just leave? Because you're supposed to be out for 10 minutes.
Well, okay, this is...
That's a VST level ruling. That depends on your relationship with the spirits, like whether they would help you of their own accord, whether or not you're...
Well, I don't think it actually takes actions to order them.
No, I don't think so.
Which is weird.
Yeah, no, it doesn't.
So, I mean, one of the groups I like to summon, just as a Lupus player, who's Inspect, which I think every Lupus player is, with the goal of getting Spirit Vessel eventually. I summon a lot of Galliard Gafflings because they heal for basically infinite damage, and at the end of the combat, they can run the Circle of Cleansing for me. Like, I don't ever have to learn that gift.
I will say that when the next set of FAQ updates comes around, I'm not saying I would expect to change to the Jaggling and the Healing Clouds, but I do think it is something that needs to be addressed, and hopefully Rules is discussing very seriously. I know I'm going to bring it up with them.
Wait, hang on. Chooses not to stick with the strengths. Wait, I'm not sure. Well, here's the other thing. There is... I forgot which power or focus it is, but you can still communicate mentally even if you're unconscious, or use gifts that don't require certain activations while knocked out.
Is it awareness?
I think it's awareness. I think awareness lets you do that.
There's definitely a power.
Right. So if I was a PC and I was knocked out and I had a cloud of Gafflings around me, if I had the awareness skill,
it's awareness, yeah.
If I had the awareness skill, I would hammer that as like, nope, I already activated this gift. I can get my Gafflings to heal me or carry me off.
Yeah.
If I didn't have the awareness skill on my sheet and on the ST, I would be like, do you have awareness? And if they say no, I'd be like, they stop helping because you can't use your power effectively because you didn't take that skill at 1. The same way that you should respond to somebody who didn't take survival at 1 if they want to rage heal. You're like, I'm really sorry, but you didn't take it.
I mean, this is definitely no kind of ruling. It's just a common sense look at what the rules say in the book.
This is that's the conversation I just would walk through.
Yeah.
It's 1 to 2 XP to have it 1. or one of the 5 things you get at 1 to start the game with. So
there are definitely a collection of abilities you want to have just at 1 to get the innate for it. Just get it.
Yeah. Oh, God.
Survival awareness, stuff like that, yeah.
Yeah, survival awareness,
Streetwise, yeah.
Subterfuge. I like Subterfuge.
Yeah.
A lot of other people don't use it that much. But it's great when you do use it and there's not really a counter to it.
Yeah.
You're like, I didn't use that gift. He did. And they're like, God damn it.
I mean, we got off track here a little bit, but what I'm saying is that as a player, you want to have combat that means, and this is something we come back to all the time, this is something Bucky hammers at all the time, you want to have combat that means something. You don't want to just have exploding bubbles filled with XP that you punch, and then...
High stakes, meaningful combats make for meaningful stories. And it keeps players sharp. And the onus then on the S2s is to run things competently and to do it all kosher. No custom mechanics, no fudging, none of that. You got to know your stuff. You got to be able to run that combat. And that said, they have simplified combat greatly. The BNS system is just way easier to run combat with than the old system was.
I keep seeing the word almost. You guys don't get points for almost.
What, almost all dying?
Yeah.
Everybody almost all dies in most big combats.
Yeah. It's fine. That's cool. It's a good story.
If not one PC actually died, you didn't almost all die. What you did is you all survived. So you could change that sentence to we all survived that combat. But
I want to be clear, I'm not hating. I think it's a natural inclination by storytellers not to slaughter their players.
Well, because if they kill all their players, they don't have a game.
Right.
Everybody get out your alts.
Right. Well,
suddenly your game is 8 on an Aussie.
My point is more, I don't think I think STs can go a little farther because werewolves are not as squishy as you might think about it.
That's closer.
Yeah.
All rage heal and head to book. That's pretty legit.
Yeah. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. That's a good combat. That is an intense combat where you had to get the fuck out. That's good. Not a problem.
Which should happen fairly regularly. I mean,
a lot of encounters, if you have a set BSD pack in your... The other thing is, established antagonists who stick around. If you have a set BSD pack in your game where you have a series of engagements that end inconclusively with both sides withdrawing with no casualties, that's actually kind of cool.
Yes.
As long as the NPCs are fighting intelligently as the players would.
Another big thing is that currently, in the game state, the nation is losing. And right now, people are going out there, kicking ass, taking names, and getting glory. But you are losing. The game state is... The worm is so winning right now, they're basically ignoring the nation as a non-entity. So
that's actually in a couple plot things.
Right. Yeah. So when they're attacked, they're just like, oh, there's the fucking Garu fighting?
I thought we got all those fuckers.
Like, we won so hard, some of our leadership went home. Like, that is where they're at. But a lot of players still have, I think, a more revised mentality of like, we're going to go out there, we're going to kick the worm's ass. Yeah. Which you can still have, but you have to know that right now, the nation is down on its luck. They barely survived. They figured out a new way to grow cairns. Bad guys don't have to have seed cairns. They do it the old-fashioned way. They howl. If you don't stop them, boom, instant hive. Yeah. That's where they're at.
Bad times. But yeah, I mean, I don't know.
There's a lot going on.
Be cool about it as a player and give your ST the confidence. Like, as a player, talk to your ST. Be like, dude, it's cool, man. I know what Apocalypse is. I know what I signed up for. You don't have to be afraid. Just let's go.
Or if you're not in a scene, especially with some of the smaller games, right? If you have 12 out of 15 players are doing one thing, instead of having 3 bored people, help your ST. Run some NPCs, get some NPC sheets, and just help them out, narrating and whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot more to the game than combat. Especially, like, there's a lot to take care of besides combat. But combat is, it's interesting. If you just removed the combat from the book, just take out all combat mechanics, you'd still have a hell of a game. Like, there's so much to Apocalypse besides just punching things. But when we talk about rules, when we talk about our sheets and stuff like that, it always comes back to rules. Because that's what we have to talk about when we're talking about combat and stuff like that.
Well, I mean,
because that's the thing to debate.
It's useful.
Yeah.
It lets you kill the NPCs you don't like. It's a pretty core concept. They used to call Werewolf a game of savage horror rather than personal horror because it's not that personal. That thing has way too many limbs and teeth and eyes, and it needs a good killer.
I mean, should be nobody who ever honestly says, unless they're corrupted or they've started to fall apart. You know, maybe the worm side makes some good logical arguments. Maybe look at this guy.
He is bristling with teeth.
He's got teeth on his forehead.
Way too many mouths.
I mean, he might have a great philosophical argument,
Keeps
but
wailing. It's really
they're
weird.
a little more monstery. I mean, not that Geru can't be monstery, obviously, but
Well, they are, and they're all tainted.
Actually, yeah. Oh, the bitten thing. We should talk about the bitten thing a little bit before we move on.
I mean, they're written super duper powerful. I mean, you get on the Awakened Minor Spirit point, you get your, if you're Inspect and you have a high occult, you get your occult in Gafflings of rank 3. That's a lot of Gafflings.
I think I know the intent of the book. Speaking to what Edmond said, honestly, you could solve Awakened Minor Spirit and Awakened Major Spirit by simply running them as they're written and treat them as NPCs, not Pokemon. I think that's a fair statement if you look at ethereal intent and what I think the rules were meant to say. But unfortunately,
I have a totally different worldview.
Well, let me skip through this.
Go ahead.
But I do think that at times, as someone who spends a lot of time with these materials, the spirit rules can feel a little bit janky. Is that a fair? I think that's a fair statement. It's a little bit janky, and I think they do need some tweaking. I'm not exactly sure what the tweaks are to fix them, but when I see the nanite clouds, it makes me a little uncomfortable. I don't know. What do you think? You have a comment. You're holding back. You got your arms crossed. You're looking away. You're not making eye contact. This is very... Bring it. Let's
honestly, I think that almost all of your problems are solved if you just cap healing from outside sources. If you can only get healed a certain amount or number of times per round or whatever, suddenly it's actually important to have a Geru, like a cog with a merit, make his, or her...
Well, because right now being able to heal 5 instead of 2 or whatever is like,
It's meaningless. No. Your healing gifts are meaningless. In the light of spirits, you do not matter. All the healing kits are basically garbage. You should just have somebody inspect of literally any tribe with access to those gifts. It's a real disservice to things like Child of Gaia builds where you take the merit to make your healing better. That 3 for 6 should matter. Mm-hmm. But right now, between healing talons and clouds of spirits, and the fact that spirits are baller, and int is probably one of the best starting focuses because eventually you can get another one anyway. That is a core problem of the game. It makes combat ridiculously weird. It requires elder powers to deal with, and it makes whole builds just not matter, and that's not good. Like, that's bad.
I will say one thing Edenon just said is you only get 1 spirit per cast. People just cast multiple times before a fight. This actually touches on a larger issue I see in combat, where storytellers turn to players before a fight starts and goes,
okay, you have X rounds.
You have X rounds, power everything up. I think that is an incredible mistake by storytellers. I think that is a huge... It seems like a good idea. I know I did it at first. But the problem is because Geru combat is based around that ramp, when you take away that ramp and just let everybody start off at the top of the ramp, it's a joke. It's a complete joke.
Instant death.
There's no way the NPCs can do anything. There's nothing, because there's within the rules, without the storyteller cheating. If you tell your players to take 5 rounds to amp up,
you should walk out and pretty much insta-jib everything.
Right. Because it's...
And if you can't insta-jib everything with 5 rounds of preparation, then I don't know if there's any help to be had. If the bad guys had 5 rounds on you, they should be dropping werewolves left and right.
Walking in, you're doing like 2 or 3 extra damage, plus you have all your powers activated all the way.
A rain of aggravated damage and worm whales and all sorts of crazy stuff.
No, that's what I'm saying. But again, that cycles back to the ST not powering up like players.
Each player has 1 sheet to worry about. Every ST generally has to juggle 12 phantom sheets or whatever because they're trying to keep track of multitudes. And that means the more focused people are always going to be more effective, and that's fine. But...
Well, hang on. If they're going to a fight, they should be as ready as possible. Generally, I would agree with that. But remember, you can't step sideways into a worm affinity area. So generally, if you're going to start shit in Wormland, you generally shouldn't know the exact millisecond you're going to start combat. I mean, a lot of these powers, like Rage is a good example. Every round you're not in combat, you lose a point of Rage. So you need to time your ramp up perfectly to the start of fight. And
Right.
a lot of times that shouldn't be possible when you don't control the area. Like, you shouldn't be able to just get 4 rounds to power up. Yeah, I mean, obviously there are builds that counteract
There's
that.
tons of gifts to help with that.
But those are gifts and people taking an action to do that.
Right.
As opposed to just the ST by Fiat saying take 3 rounds to power up.
Yeah, or even 1. Any number of rounds to power up before combat.
Do you know what it reminds me of? Mr. Ronso? When you're on, like, you're watching Voltron or something, and all the enemies just back away and let Voltron form.
Right, they're just gonna watch.
Oh, he's a cut. Just let him pop. Oh, he's forming Voltron. Maybe we should do something to stop that. Ooh, look at that giant. So we should probably do something.
That's
about
the other
that.
thing. People need to police their own sheets. That's just something that's always been true in every game forever. If you're given 3 rounds to prepare, mark down the gnosis that you should have spent using all the powers that you've been activating. But that's a matter of you keeping yourself kosher. There's not a lot that can be really done for that other than you're your own guard.
I would say situations where,
do it right.
situations where you are given the X amount of time to power up for combat should be like Christmas. It should be like the moment when everything's going right and you completely got the jump, you have the initiative, everything is exactly the way you want it, you're starting the fight on your own terms. That's great. But in a situation where, like, there's a bunch of worm creatures attacking your cairn, how the fuck do you know the exact millisecond they're going to start attacking?
Or, hang on, vice versa. When the good guys are hunting bad guys,
yeah.
Why is everything of the worm chilling in the reel?
They can step sideways. This is
I'm a BSD,
yeah.
right? I'm chilling at my place.
Yeah.
I am in the Umbra. It is the one place I know for a fact that Garu cannot get to unless they walk there through the Umbra, all the way through all that worm Umbra.
Right.
And I would have hella early warning if they came within like a very great distance and nope, I'm just chilling on a couch waiting to get shot in the face.
Yeah.
In the real world. For no reason. I can't step sideways in wild affinity places.
But even
that has to be a tactical decision.
Even in neutral ground, and even if you're like, how are you controlling the exact millisecond you start the fight? Unless you're all blurred, and like everything goes right, like nobody notices you. You're standing. You're standing within punching range, and no one notices you're there.
A well-run Garrett boot squad is terrifying. If you are all blurred and you're all like in mind link, and you're like, all right, so we're spending gnosis. Here's the plan. This is what we're gonna do. And then you all drop out of blur. And you own something. Congrats.
That should be special. That should be
that.
awesome. That should be a moment the players are like, we planned, we did the work, we controlled the situation, we fought the enemy on our terms. That moment is awesome. Do that.
Oh, yeah. That is actually something. Having territory with security or a cult.
Yeah.
Screw your stock spirits. They're not affecting this area. But more importantly, somebody tried to step sideways in an area that wasn't. It was claimed, but I don't think it was technically worm. Anyway, they bounced. If anything is somebody else's territory, you can bounce them when they try to step sideways.
Yeah, let me think about it. I'm not going to let that guy defend us across this Umbra here. I'm not going to do that.
Yeah.
He's not entering my domain.
No.
Sorry,
This is our clubhouse.
Yeah.
We were here first.
Yeah.
You came to kill us. I'm not letting you step sideways.
Yeah, no, we're talking about. Okay, I think most of the players know what we're talking about. What we're talking about is the storyteller saying you have 3 rounds to power up. That is what we're talking about here. Oh yeah, no, that's even better. But that presupposes an enemy who's fighting to win, which they should be.
Yes, they should be fighting to win, and if they can't win, they should probably leave. Which is something I've had a fair number of NPCs do, especially when you have to play.
Your NPCs should probably want to live.
People did 5 damage to the bad guys. They started running, and then this was weird. The PCs, I mean, they took out 1 or 2, but they let most of them get away. They're like, oh, they're running. I'm like, well, that's what stock NPCs do when you do that much damage. But more importantly, they let them go.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they now have important information like what you all look like, but that wasn't even like a thing.
I don't want to say it's laziness. That's not fair to storytellers. A lot of times, storytellers, there's 12 players and one of you,
and you have to run 24 bad guys,
and they don't want
rough.
And they don't want to keep track of. Okay, you power. Okay, so you're powering on this. No. Oh God, I want to die. I mean, I respect this storyteller doesn't want to do that, which means players have to do that. Which means players should be pushing other players to do that in the fight. I think it just makes it better. It's a better game. That's all.
Yeah, well, not letting people power up before the fight isn't an issue of laziness. Just don't do it. I mean, that's my.
And by that
just
we
don't
mean,
let people do
and
it.
that what we mean is like the 3 rounds of free action. Okay, guys, go power up.
Yeah.
That is specifically what we're talking about.
Yeah, you don't have to be a logistics master and be able to juggle the 15 bad guys for every fight. Like that's a high bar. Like that's difficult for anybody. Like I run tons of combats. I forget stuff. I was like, oh right, there was other guys who should have been shooting you that round. I just forgot they were there because they're not my sheet. I don't care. Like it's just something that so things slip. I mean that happens.
I think hopefully things like worldofdarkness.com will really help us with this once they roll out. Once things like just basic combat things are automated on an app, which is coming very soon. The beta came out at Origins. I still got to get my hands on it. But I mean, once you have that, you just boop, 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 push your stuff in, your sheets, your storyteller has your sheet. I mean,
it'll make everybody a lot more honest.
4 months ago, we were talking about this hypothetically.
I think we talked about it knowing that, I mean, this was the next major step.
It was the obvious step.
Yeah.
We weren't in any sense visionaries. It was such an obvious space to grow into.
People have been talking about this and writing about it for a
yeah.
while. I mean, I'm not going to look at a bunch of popular
No.
authors like Dr. O and what's his name?
Werner Vinge, Rainbow's End.
And what's his name? The laundry... Strauss, yeah. I mean, like, they've been talking about this shit for years, and they're all nerds.
Yeah, Halting State by Charles Strauss and Rainbow's End by Vinge. I recommend both of those if you're interested in this subject. Is WorldDarkness.com work for you? Yes. I can't speak for BNS. My understanding is yes. This was discussed on the BOD call at a national event. And if you're not an obsessive nerd like me, you might not have heard it. But no, WD.com is coming to MES. Not is, but is probably is the term I should use. Is probably. As long as it works and there's no horrible problems, my understanding...
It's not too difficult to automate. I mean,
I'm just going by what I heard at the board of directors meeting, is that it sounds like WD.com is something that MES is very seriously interested in. Actually, are you ready? We should transition a little bit.
For what?
The following is a paid advertisement for the Bucky Abramowski for board of directors. Please.
I threw my hat in. I actually have to respond to the first round of questioning, which I saw in my email. I just got back in town and now we're streaming. Yeah, I'm running for the board. This isn't really the venue to answer the questions that were set to everybody, but basically, I'm intrigued by it. It's an interesting thing for me. I read the description of what the job entails, and I'm like, well, I'm a lawyer. I definitely understand all my duties. Like, I understand the duty of care and loyalty and things like that. And it's. I feel like through gaming, through conventions, and even through this stream, I've gotten a lot of opportunity to get a lot of input out of players, and I want to take a lot of that, and especially when it's concerns, and I want to carry that with me to the board, because occasionally things come from above that are either mysterious or start out intrinsically problematic, and I feel like it shouldn't have to get all the way to the point where individual players at Chronicles are complaining. Like there needs to be voices at every level where it's like, hey, we can probably work this better, or we can do this better, and to work with the various national staffs and whatnot. And the good news is I don't actually wear any official hats. I just help out like as much as I can. I write stuff, I help staffers out, but I don't actually have to roll back any of my MES involvement because I am a humble narrator. But yeah, I look forward to the opportunity. It just seems really cool. I know what they do. I've read minutes. Like, it's neat. It's something I feel like I could do well. So vote early, vote often. No, vote the correct number of times. But I hope I make it onto your ticket. And the other thing that I like is people know where I stand because of the tremendous number of logged hours of this show. There's very few things that people... I really wonder what Bucky really thinks about that. I've probably ranted about it on talking about werewolves in one form or another at some point. Although it might be in a lost episode.
This is why Iggy wasn't here tonight. He's just revolted by the naked politicking and electioneering you're engaging in right now. That's why Iggy sat this episode out.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, one of the other things I like about the board is I don't get anything for it. And they don't get, well, just largely, they don't really get anything for it.
No, there's no prestige, there's no MC bump, there's nothing.
Yeah, you don't, it's not like there's something in it for me that I get, and I actually like that. Because, like, I was initially disappointed when, Riff lost episodes. Never forget. I was disappointed when, as an ST, if you poured stuff on your keyboard, I would laugh forever.
Oh,
your laptop.
I committed. I fucking committed, man.
When I was like, oh yeah, you have to have a character to vote, and I'm like, but I'm an ST. I don't want anything. And they're like, nah, you need one. I was like, okay, I'll make a character. It's like,
I mean, that's an easy fix to the handbook. Player or ST in the game.
Right.
Because for my part, I know there's a lot of storytellers out there who love playing characters. In a perfect world, and I say this again, we don't live in a perfect world.
No.
In a perfect world, no ST would have a PC.
Well, that's
in their chronicle, in their game. I mean, obviously that's going to happen. It is a thing that is happening, and it's a good thing that it happens.
Well, it's required right now, basically.
But I'm just saying, from my perspective, I think in that imaginary dream world where we had 10 times the number of members, and we had all this other stuff, and the org is growing hugely, and we're limping towards mainstream. In that world, it would just be so nice if storytellers didn't have characters that they played in their own games.
Yeah, they can have them on the shelf. I get that. To play in other games.
Well, or just to play them once their term is over.
Right. It was an interesting culture shock when I joined. What was it? It's already been like half a decade in MAS.
4 years exactly.
Oh, that's almost half a decade.
So 9, see?
But yeah, that was like the first culture shock. I was like, wait, I have to have a character to vote? That's like the opposite of
You're talking about voting for VST.
Yeah, voting for VST. That is what I'm talking about. In the local game, you need to have a character to have a vote. I'm like,
well, at the point where this rule came out, I was at the time we discovered this vote after we joined MES. This is just a tangent, but it's fun. When we first joined MES, I didn't allow any of my STs on my local staff to have characters. So we had like a 35, 40 active player game with four STs, none of whom had characters. And then the vote came and was like, holy shit, there's 5 of us and none of us can vote.
Yeah, we can't vote.
Holy shit.
So we rolled tunes. Yeah. That's what. Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's my infomercial.
Say it. Say it.
Oh, I'm Bucky Abramowski, and I approve of this message.
Got it. Cool. Covered that. That's really everything we had in our itinerary tonight. Let's open the floor up to some questions. What's everything out there? There's a bunch of you guys.
It has been months.
It has been months. I'm sure you've been aching to ask us things. Yeah, I understand. So
also, it was great to see people in the chat before, just when the theme song was playing, getting that hype. I was like, it's nice just to feel liked.
No, it's good. I'm glad. I didn't think there was any question we were coming back, but I'm glad that people remembered us, which is nice.
I think we're doing well.
I'm doing well. Yeah,
I'm doing well.
Yeah. I'm really enjoying ENST APOC. It's been 6 months. It's been 10 months in the position. I'm having a great time. I would love to keep doing it for the rest of Chronicle. Honestly, I love it, so I'm doing good. Mechanics question for a character not acting by their political faction. Oh, that's fine. Mechanics wise, that's fine. Let me talk about that.
Independent. Well, there is no independent.
Well, let me say this. So, say Get Offenders. You're Get Offenders.
Gotta stop slamming the table.
You're Get Offenders. You walk in the door. You are assumed to be a member of your tribe's political party, which is the Sanctum of Gaia. You cannot give a fuck about the Sanctum of Gaia. You could.
You can think it's part of the cancer killing the nation.
Yeah, but
I mean, you can believe that. Just on either team.
Yeah.
This is wrong, and we need to either hash this out. You can have a million different philosophies where you're like, this is dumb.
Yeah.
Or this needs to stop now.
But game mechanically, given that there are merits involved and how everything like that works.
You're in one faction or the other.
Yeah, you're in one faction or the other. But that doesn't affect your IC position. Now, that being said, if your character is acting in a way that the rest of your tribe doesn't approve of,
they might beat you up.
They might beat you up.
I mean,
that's not a game mechanic. If people don't like you,
I'm playing a character where every time I go to a thing, I'm like, the Red Talons might just kill me. I mean, at this point, I'm pretty confident that they're not going to because they sort of understand the character I made. But on its face, I'd be in line to be like, we need to have a talk with him or kill him. Like that's the thing.
Yeah. But you can't mechanically be independent. No, because of the way the mechanics work, just the way the rules being given, it just
you could be a strider.
It's something
you would need to be a strider.
Well, yeah, it's something we've discussed, but it is kind of a logistical nightmare to get into it.
Could a Garrow just be like, I'm completely out and I'm joining the Ahadi?
Well, Ahadi aren't currently approved for PCs, so they can NPC out.
Yeah.
You can always NPC out and join the Ahadi. But no, you are effectively, it's like, you just are that faction, even if you don't give a fuck about it. And you could say that you don't give a fuck about it. The thing is, this has no influence on your IC actions.
Yeah, being in the Sanctum doesn't mean that you actually... Because again, you don't have to... Not only do you not have to support the positions of your tribe, you can actively vote against them. Mm-hmm. And if enough of you do that, then you have changed the position of your tribe, which is, I think, is great. I mean, I get a gamer boner whenever I see the level of PC power that is attainable by the PCs, especially in APOC. Like, I love that.
Yeah.
It gives me great joy.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, think of the Overton window in Apocalypse. The Overton window is a political concept of what's the acceptable opinion you can have and still be in a political party or have an acceptable view. The Overton window in Apocalypse is defined as what you can believe and espouse believing without someone kicking your ass.
The question was about sect defector. You can go from one sect to the other. I don't think you can stop halfway in the merit and not join the other sect.
Effectively, if you want to be neutral, you would mechanically be a member of your default faction and just espouse publicly that you do not give a single fuck. This actually touches back to something about the factions. People have been assigning an importance to them that I think doesn't exist.
Importance to what?
The factions. In so much as they're like vis-a-vis, let's do a vis-a-vis here. In relation to a good example of something that touches on this point is about the Farah joining the Concordat. Which doesn't... The point is that what are the factions? The factions are voting blocks of tribes that tend to support specific positions. That's what those things are.
Mostly just the one.
Yeah.
It's really about the one position.
Well, they have larger positions.
They do, and they have tribal positions, and there are other positions that the Sanctum takes or that the Concordat takes. But the issue is Sabine versus the Margrave.
Yeah.
Right? It's who's actually going to be the person actually in control, the number one leader.
But both sides spin that it's more than that. That it's more than just naked power.
Well, that's politics.
Right.
But a lot of it is naked power.
Yeah.
That is the deepest divide.
Mm-hmm. So without tribal counselors to affect tribal council votes and tribal council positions, it doesn't mean anything for Farah to be in the Concordat. I'm not saying that it's not something we would allow to happen. I'm just saying, looking at it mechanically, it doesn't mean anything as far as we can tell.
Oh yeah, no.
That's what we mean.
There is more than that. I'm just saying that is still the biggest, deepest divide. Is who's going to be actually in control of the whole nation, because it's not just the council. Yeah. It was, and nor is it intended to forever stay that way.
And what I was saying about the mechanics and the mechanics and the merits is exactly why it's problematic to allow hot swapping between positions and going into neutrality and things like that. It's just mechanically a headache. What I think need to be clear to people is, even if you're Get Fenris, in our example, and in the Sanctum of Gaia, that doesn't put a limit on your behavior, except in so much as other Get won't tolerate your behavior, which would be the case even if there was no such thing as the Sanctum of Gaia or Concordat of the Stars.
Even within those parameters, I think pretty much every tribe has a soft spot Farah in the Sanctum. Or another tribe that they get along with across party lines. Like, the Get like Korax because Ravens and Odin. There was another one that they like. But yeah, there's usually like a favored amongst the other Farah for many of the tribes. So there's wiggle room even when you are conservatively a member of your faction. It's not just one monolith.
And you can definitely say factions are stupid, factions are killing us.
Because arguably they are.
Arguably they're not, but that's an arguable position. But that is a position you can take. That is within the boundary of acceptable behavior. The only thing that's not acceptable is what other players won't tolerate. It's really not up to STs. As fans of Hamilton, what tribe auspice rank would you give Hercules Mulligan? Hercules Mulligan is obviously a bone gnawer. He's literally a shit-shoveling ruffian. He describes himself as that. He is an Arun, and he's clearly an Adrian at the end of Act 1 of Hamilton. This is an easy question. Why did you bother asking? Okay. So are you planning to draw up a separate sheet for Bronze Cock, since we know it as a separate renown list? This was literally an IC joke by Braun. Braun was... That was... What have we been wrestling
Did I
called?
tell him the costuming joke when you asked me?
Well, hang on. I mean, that was literally a heel speech from Braun. And even though he had a complete defense, he literally did save a sept, but he also literally was tired of everyone's shit and did kind of just throw down a little bit. But that was the entire point. Braggadocio is the... Okay, we were in a liar's ball, the liar's dance, for what's worth. So it's literally all about braggadocio. Braun threw down the braggadocio. That is what happened. He got...
I was hoping everybody would pelt him with little red stones.
That would be hot. Yeah.
It'd be like, really?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
But...
Yeah. Okay. Could you pay 1 point faction to fact deserter and not choose any other faction?
Back to what we were talking about.
I'm just scrolling down.
Yeah.
Wouldn't that make you independent? No, there's no such thing as that merit. That's homebrew. We don't have any homebrew in this chronicle as much as we can help. Except for filling in necessary gaps.
There's the merit to be in the other faction.
Yeah.
That's what they're saying. Could you stop that merit halfway?
No. But you can openly just say, I do not give a fuck about the sanctum of Gaia. Like, no one... You don't have a party ID card. Yeah. I found out...
I mean, one great way to do that is to make a Strider.
Yeah.
that is an option.
Yeah. Everyone likes the Korax. That is factually true. All tribes like Korax. Yep.
Yeah. Within certain parameters.
Yeah.
It gets awkward. I've always wondered why they kind of put up with them as well. It's to get the information, but then they don't want to talk to the Korax.
Yeah. He waited until the end for when all the Ragabash had already given out their redstones. But that is exactly how the Liar's Ball is written in the book, is that the Tale Singer has to tell his story last. The fact that nobody else just got all rap battly with it isn't my problem.
Yeah. I told the terrible story.
Oh no, you can hate the Ardbri. The Ardbri's he's not a likable man. He's a hero, but he's not a likable man.
Can I say the costuming thing? Oh. We were talking about it. Brian's like, how do I costume for the Ardbri? And I'm like, have you considered wearing a t-shirt that says kill me? Because I really want players to know that they can kill you and should kill you. Because, I mean, I love Brian. I hate that NPC. That NPC needs...
He's a hero. He saved a great Cairn all by himself.
He needs to get put down like the dog that he is, and the problems. He is walking maelstrom of problems, and it is a constant disappointment in the Fianna.
He changed his tribal flaw. Hang on. All by himself, he changed his tribal flaw.
Many Fianna who already hate him, I'm like, you should just kill him then. Please do. Out of character. In character, I'm just like, yeah, he's alright, whatever. Fuck.
Oh, would you ever experiment with an APOC game where Farah were control over Geru? If I ever moved to Africa and got a LARPing organization started, I would absolutely run an Ahadi network. That would be cool.
That'd be baller. If we had a game in like Lagos, when the Ahadi was in charge of everything, that'd be sick.
You know what?
We should have that.
The Emerald Courts is a train wreck. Literally a train wreck of different desires, goals. Their whole denouement fell apart with the Age of Apocalypse. They are so fucked, they aren't even worth mentioning. Like, the Emerald Courts is just a big bowl of fucked. The Ahadi is fucking awesome. I love the Ahadi. Like, they've been through so much, and they so expressed that tenacious spirit of Africa that we will endure and get through this, and we keep getting shit on by the rest of the world, but by God, here we are. I love them for them.
Here's the thing. This goes back to the original point. If you mean a Farah-controlled game here, if different breeds of pharaoh were willing to basically either sell out other breeds of pharaoh or just buy in or take second-class citizenship and just slowly erode the sanctum by everybody joining it, they would have a plurality of votes and would only need to get the people who already like them to vote their way, and then you could see a pharaoh-dominated game, and all that would require is PCs. And I think
that's right.
I think staff would be horrified, but I mean, what the hell? That would be awesome.
We've actually dodged that. If the Pharaoh just completely bought into the IC situation, and we're just like, yep. If they just, if they were the Irish immigrants who just became all the cops, whoopsie doodles. I mean, that they could really subvert the system.
Yeah, they just became the establishment.
Give them 20 years, they're running Tammany Hall. I mean, I'm just saying.
I mean, it's.
There's so much going on in this chronicle. People are doing it. Ironically, and this is actually ironic, I am doing at least 5 times less than I was last chronicle, like narratively. We have so much less that we're doing this chronicle, but because of the way we're doing it, where players can't really tell the difference anymore, I think it seems like
I would say
there's
you're
a lot
pulling the curtain far too hard. I would take credit for all of that.
But
This is all brilliant. It's all you.
But people are saying they're doing so many things at once. All I'm saying is that national plot looks like a lot, but a lot of it is just creating these skeletons for local games to hang their stories on, and it makes it so much richer. And it's great because we're actually doing. Honestly, look at my team. I've got 5 people on my team. Last time I had 15. We have a third of the team we had last time. This chronicle is bigger than the old chronicle was at the end of it. It's great. I love it.
That's the best. Yeah, it is.
It's local players.
That's where the game happens.
Local is the game. If there wasn't local, there wouldn't be a game.
Yeah, it's very much a pyramid, and it should remain that way.
Yeah.
As far as gameplay goes, the bulk of it should be at your local game.
Yeah.
It shouldn't just be at the capstone events or the big parties or campouts or whatever. Not that those aren't fun, but games, the crazy big stuff should be distributed to the people who are actually playing.
Yeah.
Which is all of them.
Yeah. I actually had. This is actually a funny note on this.
Go for it.
I had a storyteller, a local storyteller, come to me earlier today, just asking a question about something. It's like, who should I direct them at the answers about this? I was like, you. You should direct them at you. And if you have questions about what you need to know, talk to me. Talk to my staff. But there's no one to. In general, there's no national ST that you're to pawn stuff up on. It's all on you as a VST. You are empowered. You are not a cog in the machine. You are the wheels of the machine. You're the core of it. I love that. It makes me so happy.
Yeah, the driving force of that should remain the players.
That's just.
That's what I think.
Well, from my perspective, it's a long time as a venue storyteller in HST before that and other orgs for like 20 years. Just watching org play and just being like, I think it could be done better. And like finally getting that shot has been so rewarding to finally be like, because I have so many ideas about how to reorganize the relationship between organizations and individual games. It's just nice to have that shot. It's very rewarding.
Yeah.
Glad I'm not a best at. Yeah, the Silicon got some stuff going on right now. That's true. Yeah.
Any other questions?
Yeah.
I think we only took 1.5 questions.
We just got one about it.
On some major tangents.
Yeah,
it's great seeing all of you again. Thank you.
We missed you very much.
Thank you for being here. There's over 12 viewers,
at least, because you don't get people who aren't signed in on.
Right on a football Sunday. Yeah, right. We don't get any guests and nobody who just clicked the link from Facebook and isn't signed in.
Yeah.
So it's pretty cool.
So what did we do all summer? I went away for 10 days to chase the eclipse, which was amazing. Went camping, traveled to a regional event. No, it was a good summer. It went by too quick, of course, but it was a good summer.
As they always do. I didn't do any of that. My wife did with her friends. She went to the opposite direction, and she went to the Grand Tetons to watch the eclipse.
How was her view? I never asked her about it.
It was great. She took photos, did all sorts of fun stuff. But did you get my creepy-ass picture of the doll hermit?
The hermit crab with a doll head.
Oh, yeah. No,
lovely.
It was pretty great.
I feel like Gamma was a great time. They had a lot more sight than the number of players they had required, but it also made it so we had this huge site, which it poured on APOC Day, but on Sabbat it was wonderful. Just having a huge space to work with. Oh, it was so nice.
Yeah, no, I like any time that you've got a lot of room to breathe and to play. I mean, that is, and I enjoyed it.
It was a beautiful site.
I enjoy actually playing. It is nice when it gets to happen.
That was nice with Brone. I still rarely get to play live action because I'm always storytelling. It was just nice to commit to just playing as Brone for those 2 sessions. That was really nice.
What I realized after the game is, like, I have really dour characters. Like, I should just make characters who are a little bit more chipper and fun. Because a lot of them tend to be, I don't know, either lectury or mean or like, I'm too old for this shit. And I'm like, I'm just here to have a great time.
Oh, it's a question for Bucky. On the Lost episodes, you had big outlooks on various tribes and breeds. What is your biggest change in mindset now that we're 6 months in?
Oh.
It's a good question.
It is. I would say...
I mean, I know my answers on this, which I'll address in a second.
Things about tribes and breeds. As far as the tribes go, I haven't super changed my position that much. I still feel somewhat underwhelmed by the tribes I felt underwhelmed by. I still feel like there's still a lot of imbalance. And not, I wouldn't say imbalance because it's not something you can really balance. It shouldn't be 12 identical tribes. But some of the issues that were there are still there. As far as breeds, man, Lupus are great. Lupus are so great. Especially being an int-focused Lupus, you're basically a Theurge for free. That is pretty baller. I didn't see that coming. Right? I really didn't see how great the Lupus were going to be. I would like to see some reform with I'm still of two minds about Metis in general. There's two different conversations being had there about even just the name.
Breeds be Pharaoh breeds. The breeds of Pharaoh.
Oh, I was just talking about breeds.
Yeah.
As far as Pharaoh go, I'm glad the Korax got the buffs that they got. I still felt like they needed them.
I do think one thing to point out, we should correct Bucky when he's wrong.
What happened?
Is that you were absolutely wrong about razor feathers.
What do you mean?
When you called it complete shit, garbage, it's actually very, very good. Because you add your rage damage to it. It's almost as good as
it's okay, it's still an athletics job. And I'm glad that every Korax was a gymnast when they were a kid. But
it is
athletics is only...
It is a respectable combat power. You were wrong about that. But just admit it.
Athletics is not a chop you get to use on other chops.
It's fair.
You're not going to use brawl, melee, or firearms on a whole bunch of stuff like cheap shot and like a bunch of other things. You don't get to use athletics on them. But it's still intrinsically, and they had to up the damage and add blind or something else.
No. The point is that you missed the fact that you could add your rage damage to the feathers, which is why you thought it was shit. You thought it was 1 damage and garbage. Like,
It still starts out pretty weak.
It starts out. It's very strong if your rage is high, though.
If you're an angry clucking chicken.
I'm just saying you can be an angry chicken.
Okay, no, that's fair.
That's fair. I'm just saying.
I make mistakes. And again, and I had a great conversation with Joe. What is his last name? Perry. We mostly agree on a lot of mechanical things, but we do have different combat philosophies, and that was interesting to see. Like,
both of you saying that this build is brilliant and shit, back and forth. Okay, to give you some context, after the New Jersey campout, him and Joe were sitting down and talking about Red Talon builds. And
we still so disagree on Unchained the Beast Mine. I'm like, this is the best power in the game. He's like, it is garbage. But you both defended your points of all, though, which I thought was very interesting. There was a lot of stroking of chins and like, all right, well, that does have its uses. Like, it was a very neat conversation to be in, and have a disagreement about. That was also a lot of fun. As far as the other breeds of Pharaoh,
I've got my answers on this. So
I don't know. I thought the Ratkin would matter more, or that there'd be more of them.
I thought well, the rat camp definitely mattered. I did think there'd be more. That did surprise me that they're sooner because they're low approval. I figured there'd be shitloads of them.
Right.
But I really feel like there are less Ratkin than there are like Kitsune, which are
or Bastats.
yeah.
I mean, coyotes are also low approval. I've seen some, but I don't know. I also haven't seen the sort of anti-were-coyote bias, anti-Nuisha bias.
I think in a lot of ways, Nuisha feel lost in the shuffle because they don't really join. They don't really.
They have a lot of wiggle room for crazy concepts that I feel like they could be reaching for the stars.
I think there's a lot of potential in Nuisha that has not been tapped yet in Chronicle. I would say that. Here's my list, by the way. Flavor text.
So you have to be athletic to point. Lightning.
You're throwing lightning. You're throwing it.
Yeah, I mean, it is what it is.
I would say Kitsune turned out a little differently than I expected. I did expect a little more fate. As we were talking about earlier in the episode, this is just touching back on that. I expected the Kitsune to be a little more fatalistic because it was really baked into their story. But people didn't really approach that. That's fine. So, that's a small thing. Striders, I don't understand the Strider players as a group yet. That's something I've been watching because I love Striders. I'm fascinated by them.
I'm a big fan.
I just don't. I can get the feeling they have an opinion that makes sense. I just don't understand them yet. I would love to see more interaction between them online. I get more of a strong feel for them because the Striders, as the Fulcrum tribe, are so important, and yet in large part, they're an enigma to me. I don't really understand where they're going yet. So I need to know. That's on me. I need to know more about what's going on with the Striders. The other thing that's speaking before Chronicle, what I didn't not notice, because I think I remember talking them up, is that the Shadow Lord's gift chain is not as good as we thought. Sorry, I would say not as good as we thought.
I mean, I still think it's fine. People don't travel with their Shadow Lords, and I sort of understand why, but I always hear stuff like, oh, I mean, there's a lot of Shadowrun. There's a lot of Shadow Lord players, or my character at my home Chronicle, I have a Shadow Lord, and it's like, okay. I don't think people travel with them. I think that their issues of general distrust has disincentivized people to take their Shadow Lords to the big games.
Well, I think their flavor about being uncertain if they're corrupted.
Right. Plays into that.
And the fact that their powers aren't quite... They're just... The Silverfang, they need it to be as powerful as the Silverfangs.
Yeah,
they're not. I mean, they're good. They're toolbox. At best, you could say the Shadow Lords are toolboxy.
They are. And it's a good toolbox.
Yeah, but it is a toolbox.
It's just way more supportive than the Silverfang kit. Silverfangs who get their stuff and other stuff are really powerful.
Yeah. Well, that's something.
Shadow Lords who get all their stuff are somebody you want fighting by your side, but if you don't have the power, you don't really care about it. Like, you want a Shadow Lord there to, like, rip their shadow, so that there's more slots to fill.
Right.
But it's not even necessarily things that they can fill well.
They fill that support slot.
Which is sort of weird.
Yeah.
The
other Shadow Lords. The other thing I would say is Glasswalker players did surprise me by how organized they got so quickly, and they have a very clear tribal story going, which I think is awesome. And Silverfangs, I mean, by design, I don't think this is a surprise so much as it is by design. But the Silverfangs are so conflicted and on top of themselves that they're basically neutralized. Even though there are very many Silverfangs.
Oh yeah, their worst enemy will continue to be the other Silverfangs.
Which in many ways is protecting us from the Shadow Lord, the problem with the Shadow Lords right now, which is good.
Just to go back up.
Explain why Unchained is good. Go.
Okay, so there's...
Set the tone. What's the power? Just go through.
Okay, Unchain the Beast Mind is the Red Talon 4 power. You activate it, it's got a 10 or 15 step range. I think it's 10. There's no chop. It's a simple action. Everybody in the AoE, if they're werewolves, they're 2 steps higher on their rage track for the purposes of frenzy. If they're vampires, they get beast traits. If they're everything else, they basically flip out. It's similar to sort of like a baby delirium effect, because like it, and again, no chop. So the basically the 2 dueling design philosophies are get to rage 10 and stay there, and basically take the negs, but you're in a position where you're also regenerating a lot more and doing a lot more damage, or view the rage track between 7 and 10 as something that you're going to pinball between rapidly. And And so Unchain the Beastmine plus Apotheosis of Rage is the combo that I favor, which is get to 10 as fast as possible, double strike on the highest rage action, and then immediately shed yourself of those negs, dump back into the rage thing, but you're still in frenzy as a red talon, you're still exceptionaling on everything, as opposed to getting there, do as much damage as possible, then go for, say, like a mass AoE build, because you can Unchain the Beastmine and Earth's Crushing Embrace, because it's a simple and a standard, and do Untold AoE Ag. It's just different ways of looking at the rage track as your friend. The other thing is...
I love the red talons. Can I just say this, just so the way? The red talons, and I said this before.
They're mechanically beautiful.
The red talons are... They went from the worst tribe in Revised, and I said it openly. Mechanically, the worst tribe.
Oh, God. They were terrible.
In Revised, even with a million more gifts to work with,
yeah.
red talons were fucking terrible. I mean,
they were really good at doing...
Objectively speaking.
They got big bonuses on things you would pretty much auto-succeed at just by being in Lupus.
Yes.
That was like half their gifts.
But now their manipulation of the rage track and everything is just... Mwah, they're lovely. And I love what our red talon players are doing. All right, let's just do an order. We're doing an order.
No. I just want to expand on the Unchain the Beastmine. Yeah, okay. It doesn't matter if you actually get the rage or not as a red talon. As long as you're in frenzy, you're exceptionally. The other thing is the lack of
Bucky,
rage.
your combo doesn't work at all.
What do you mean?
That's what he says.
What are you talking about? If you using Apotheos, you still want to get to 10, not like with 10 rage, not just on the track. Although you can Apotheosis before 10. But like, you can explain why I might be wrong further down. That's fine. But the other thing is, a lot of other players will get to a comfortable level of rage, right? Where they're like at 6 rage.
But if you get to rage stage 3, you can't use gifts to reduce your rage.
Right. There is a granular issue that when you're at 9 and you might gain 1 rage, you just Apotheosis of Rage. Because it doesn't require... You can do it at any time. So there's no point when they can be like, haha, you're stuck at 10.
So what you're really saying is you're effectively...
Because you're staying at 9.5. And then you're bouncing down.
At the end of the round where you would roll up to 10, so you actually should stay clear. You're staying at 9. At the end of the round when you would move to 10, you're sliding back down with Apotheosis.
Well, and you're getting a bonus action.
You can't use gifts at all when in Frenzy 3.
Yeah, I know. Well, Frenzy 3 is Rage 10.
Yeah, I'm just repeating what
Well, and the other thing is other people want to get at a real comfortable, like, Rage 6. And when you see people you want to beat up at Rage 6, whether or not they're Fomori BSDs or fellow Garo that you have to beat up, and you Unchain the Beastmine, again, like, no chop. They go into Rage Frenzy 1, and then they will hurl their weapons to the ground, and then it's Tooth and Claw, where the major advantage is to the Red Talon.
Okay, you convinced one of them, the other one is still unclear. But you got one, you got edited on.
What do you mean it's Rage 8 with Unchain? So what I'm saying is if your opponent is at 6, right? Let's say we're both at 6. I'm a red talon. I want both of us to technically, for the purposes of frenzy, to be at 8. You will throw your weapons to the ground. My weapon is being a red talon and being in frenzy. And then when we just run up to each other and start biting each other's face, I'm confident that that's the situation red talons want to be in. As far as the Anger Frenzy 3 thing, here's the thing.
Well,
it's
first
not
of all,
incredibly well written, but you can definitely do it at Rage 9.
Well, to be clear, when you have your Silver Fang Clave monster, when you have your we change these to BSD builds, they're the same thing. But when you're looking at the tribes, and your Glasswalker is shut down by this, your Silver Fang Clave monster is shut down by this. I mean, so many builds are shut down.
As far as screwing yourself, if you're a Rage 8 to count at Rage 3, there you do have to be careful about where you are, so when you can use your power. But Unchain is a simple, ending a power is a simple, and Apotheosis of Rage isn't an action. Mm-hmm. So you can end your own Unchain whenever you want. And then you can bounce or be at whatever comfortable rage you need to be at. Because with the Inspec, it'll drop you to 7, so you're never accidentally going to be at 3. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. You want your first journey to 10 rage to be kosher, basically. And then your second one, you're probably going to turn off or on the power, depending on the situation, but you really want to bone them with their rage. You want your bad guys or your nemesis to be like, oh, these guns I was just using because I'm a Glasswalker, they disgust me. Let's fisticuffs this.
Oh no, absolutely. That is an obvious build with Red Talons. Is you taunt the enemy.
I am a Red Talon Ragabash.
Yeah,
that's what I'm going for.
Yeah, you taunt the enemy up to rage 10, so they're fighting each other, and then you leave. Bye.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. If you get the enemy to be at rage 10 and just be in that frenzy where they can't use powers, they're -5 or 7 or whatever to dodge, and they're all just killing everything next to them, yeah, back away.
There's a question about if tribal distribution and or fair distribution is what we expected, and if it's okay for the game right now. My answer is just simple yes. I know it's not interesting, but I'm actually very happy with the breakdowns we have right now. The 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 Concordate, Sanctum, and Farah breakdown we had in pre-Chronicle seems to still be in place. I'm happy with that. The problem is in local games where, because of random effects of like having random groups of players, some games do not have that 1/3, 1/3, 1/3 build. And in those games, there are problems. Not so much with games that have less Farah. I think those games run fine. The problem is where games where you have way over
Mostly
1/3 Farah. Yeah. Those games, I mean, that is an unanswered question. It's a problem I'm aware of. And it's something I think about constantly, about how we can help. But a lot of that, I hate to say it, I mean, there are things that we can do at National to help those games that are mostly Farah, but a lot of that comes down to the VST. I mean, the VST has responsibility for that. And it's not sexy because players want to play certain things. But as a VST, you have to find those solutions for your local game in large part. And I'd like to think that we give the VSTs the tools they need to work with that. So it's something we're thinking about. I don't have an answer beyond that. Okay. Mainly Fair and Concordant. Yeah, mainly Fair and Concordant with fewer Sanctum has less of the political game. I do think that game is viable, though. That's more of a straight Farah working with Daguerre and everything working pretty much okay. I don't think that's the optimal situation, but a mainly Farah... I'm biased. The Northeast, and I don't see the region in MES, I mean just generally the Northeast, is has a very strong Sanctum presence, so I do see a lot of that. But the Concordant in general, working with the Farah, I think that game runs fine. I just... It's not as interesting as having a strong Sanctum presence as well.
Okay. As far as what... Okay, so two things. I would love to see a Shadow Lord ride into combat on his frenzying Hispo Red Talon steed.
That is a combo that everyone has seen and I've never seen in action.
I would love to see the Shadow Lord who took Sect Defender is like, I don't even care about politics. We need to do this. For the glory of Gaia.
The Shadow Lord riding the Hispo Red Talon is the combo that build the nation is ready to see. That is the build my heart is ready for.
As far as like what Ravna was saying for Razortooth, yeah, when you get to that Rage Frenzy 2, tons of damage, tons of actions, and you use Apotheosis of Rage to get a double action on that big hit round, you could force a Rage heal on the Everyman, and then you're not frenzying anymore. They might be frenzying, and you're going into rage actions.
More importantly, forcing the Rage heal on Everyman. Oh,
it's fucking brutal.
You are fucked.
So I love that sort of sub-game, but there is definitely something to be said to just get to 10 and stay there, and as a properly designed Red Talon, if you've already activated Gnaw, and you're good to go, you don't need other gifts. Your gift is being in Frenzy. I mean, because of their 1-point merit, they just always exceptional success on every success. It's pretty good.
Oh, the other, one last thing to circle back to things we thought pre-Chronicle we're not seeing as much.
I'm going to give the table real quick. I'll be right back.
Go. The Strike the Air Cog. I really thought that was one of the pre-Chronicle builds everyone thought was so good. But and I'm talking about the Cog build that has Stargazer Tribal Affinity. So you're striking the air and everyone's fucking with you and you're assisting Defender constantly. That is a build we thought we'd see too much of. I actually don't think it worked out to be that bad, which is good. So that was a problem character that hasn't really been a problem. So hooray! Any other questions? We are about the 145 mark. We can go about 15 more minutes if there are any more questions. Thoughts on Rokea? I'm really happy with the Rokea. The Rokea have a great combination. They have a great build. They have a good write-up in the book. The players take their story very seriously and seem to be really committing to their concepts. Like, the Rokea, in many ways, even more than the Anansi, are such an alien viewpoint, and I've been really impressed with our players on that. There is, I would like to see more separation between the Rokea and the rest of the Farah, because I think the game story supports that. But I haven't really been seeing that much yet. If we get to a situation where the Rokea break with the Farah a little bit more, I think that would be a good thing. I think the genre supports it. But that's really the only story note I have. I'm really happy with the Rokea game right now.
I like the Rokea.
Yeah. It's good. It's good.
They also lucked out because they have some great players.
Yeah,
I mean,
which is really you can't
really
plan for that. But no, the Rokea players have been amazeballs.
If a lot of the best Rokea players happen to be like Ratkin players, I have a feeling that I'd feel a lot differently about the Ratkin. Which isn't to cast aspersions on anybody. I just feel like people were passionate about character concepts and then really delivered.
Let me jump for 1 second. One thing I have seen that I think is hilarious is the best.
By the way, we do have one great local Ratkin.
I know. I don't want to say Ben is.
So I don't want to imply that we don't have good local.
There were great,
or that there aren't great Ratkin.
But there's just been less.
Yeah, I just thought there'd be way more of them, and they would be like hella more important.
I lost my point.
Sorry.
It's okay. No man, it's what I lost. What I was gonna say there. It's gone.
Sorry.
You fucking shat on me. I lost it. Oh, Bestet. I love the Bestet players slowly realizing that the Bestet are never going to speak with one voice about anything. I've loved watching that dynamic build. Bestet realizing
we're not really like one breed.
No, we are. There's a lot going on here, and we do not actually agree on much, which is fair. I mean, saying a mountain lion and a kitty cat.
You mean it's difficult to herd cats? I'll be here all night. I mean, if we just rolled the credits right there, that'd be pretty perfect. But he's walking it off. He'll come back. I think. He picked up his hat. He might not be coming back. In which case, I'm in charge of the stream. He walked out the door. I'm sorry. I had to. It was low-hanging fruit, but it was still fruit.
That son of a bitch.
I got a rim shot. Everything is right in the world.
Jesus fucking Christ.
I think I lost votes.
Yeah, no, I think you just ended your campaign right there. We just saw your campaign die.
Oh, was that my Dean scream?
Let's see.
God, you remember in politics when if you screamed weird, you were out of it?
Oh, those were the
such
days.
Innocent days. Sorry.
Is deadly redundant if you have brutal?
What do you mean? No, they're two different things.
Good talk.
Wait. I mean, it depends. Gnaw is a great example of you don't want deadly. You also don't want brutal, but fast is still useful. So you don't want the focused version of Gnaw where you lose fast for deadly, because if you're a red talon, you're going to crit anyway. But they are totally different things. Deadly is great for the trait comparison. You get +5, and you just need brutal. Otherwise, you're only ever going to exceptional if you win flat out. So if they don't retest and you win, how often does that happen? So brutal's great.
One thing, this is just a quick note on the VNS system in general. It's a core settings issue. There's no motivation to ever relent, which is a bummer.
Yeah,
I'm bummed by that. I'm seriously bummed out by that. The auto exceptional on a relent sucks. I mean, I think I understand where they're coming from, but
because you don't want to strategically relent to prevent them from.
Yeah, it's pretty core baked into the system, but. It does suck that like somebody there's no motivation.
Letting people hit you with a chop.
Yeah.
I mean, I've done it.
Yeah.
But it was on a stare down chop.
Right.
So there was no terrible.
There's no horrible stakes. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, stare down more people.
Oh yeah.
Stare down, please. Just this is our stare down.
I insulted
moment.
somebody who was way higher rank, and while I was ragabashing as hard as I could, and I think I insulted them in a really great way, and we even had a great time after the game. I deserve to get stared out. I was like, I relent. I'm out.
Stare down more, please.
Yeah, it's a great subsystem, and it really can speed up a lot of things, especially if you have a bunch of people who are willing to stare down one person, and be like, you need to not be here.
Yeah. I relented in combat yesterday. Good on you. It's good.
You're the real MVP.
Yeah.
No, I mean, sometimes it just makes sense to relent. You're like, you don't care. It's like, all right, hit me with exceptional. I don't even. It's not a big deal.
Oh, math. There's math happening. Hang on, math.
Do you have to spend extra noun on stare downs
for the challenge? No.
I don't think so.
No.
Fetish savant, accurate, reach, impaling, base, fetish bonuses, accurate, deadly, brutal, worm, vetted. Yeah, no, I mean that's all good math. Plus, okay, so the game is dodge biased. Everybody knows that, and one of the ways of dealing with that is having deadly. And having deadly, it doesn't really make up for the bias, but it is a weapon quality that counteracts a focused artful dodger. Focused artful dodger is an elder gift that gives you 5 dodge. Deadly is an equipment quality that gives you +5 on the test for exceptional. Now, while one is definitely way more useful than the other, if you do tie, you have canceled a elder gift with a weapon quality. But, I mean, slippery customer and artful dodger and all the other ways you can stack dodge, and the fact that you can have fetish armor, which is so much better than
the aggressive
vampire
dodge
armor.
builds. I expected to see more of them. I actually have never seen that sheet in the wild. The cog dodge monster. I've never seen it.
I do.
I mean, I know it exists, but I thought we'd
We'd
have a
have
problem
one locally.
I thought we'd have a problem with like there being a million
30
of
of them,
Yeah,
yeah.
and that just didn't work out that way, which is good. All right.
Yeah, fetish savant does let you get more fetishes.
All right.
Cheap shot makes it meaningless, honestly. Makes what meaningless? Dodge? I don't... Oh yeah, Fomori can easily have... Fomori can easily have any gift. That's the thing. That's why Ragabash Fomori at rank 3+ should frighten people.
Stock NPCs can have builds that PCs can never ever have.
Yeah.
Like cross-tribal gifts. Somebody can have full change in 2 different tribal gifts. A PC could physically never have that build. People need to look deeper into the possibilities of stock NPCs, and I say that a lot. Give me a stock vampire hero gifts. Well, buy the book. That's how you're supposed to run them. We did addendum that you can run them with vampire gifts instead, vampire disciplines instead. But yeah.
Yeah, dodge build. Well, okay, so I think people realized that there were foils to dodge builds, so they didn't make as many of them. But the thing is, the foils to those builds are relatively limited in number. There's sort of your easy foils, which is like
Your quick shot build. Your quick shot build shits on its
your
face.
quick shot build shits on it, sure, but anybody like Master of Fire is a great gift. It is not a good chop,
No.
but with the focus, at least it's a whole nother gift. But even at its base, you'd be like, oh, you've got 30 dodge and you've got the Stargazer back attack. Well, that only works against brawl and melee chops, so I'm just going to Master Fire you. Even though it's a garbage chop, I still have a 1/3 chance of just flat out winning, and it's going to cost you willpower to retest. More importantly, you can't make me Master Fire myself.
Well, stocks can't have techniques. That's the huge difference in APOC for stock NPCs.
Oh yeah, because many of the techniques basically just became gifts.
Right.
So
like trick shot is the great example.
Yeah, because it's just bullseye.
Yeah.
Bullseye? I think it's
bullseye, which is technique. And a stock NPC can't have techniques.
Yeah, stock ghouls can't have it, stock vampires can't have it, but stock Fomori can have it.
But the reason obviously you can fully sheet your NPCs. I think as a storyteller, if you don't use stock NPCs, you are doing a disservice to yourself. Stock NPCs are powerful and flexible enough that as a storyteller, you should be using stock
In Garo,
NPCs.
they're really good. They don't have the same downsides that they do in Vampire. There's nothing they really lack. Fomori have willpower, they have rage, they have full access to gifts. Those gifts are techniques.
Yeah.
There's really nothing in the game they're not getting.
And more importantly,
you don't have to write them
more
up.
importantly, it's much easier to hand a stock NPC to an NPC betrayer.
Right, they're definitely very likely going to
Yeah.
dodge on a win or a tie, but you still win if you win. That's 1/3 of the time. And if they retest, that's a win. You're making the dodge monsters spend willpower on dodge with a garbage Master of Fire chop. But the important thing is they can't hit you back.
Yeah, I mean, she for long-term antagonists, absolutely. I'm just saying, you're doing a disservice to yourself if you don't use stock NPCs. That's all.
I mean, we can get into this more, but
not tonight.
But not tonight. We don't need to get into the endless mechanics discussion. But I mean, there's a lot of good thoughts there. I'd have to check the math.
If you fought 16 stock NPCs, you should be dead. Unless you.
Oh, I would definitely have. I mean, I used half that number and I almost accidentally killed a whole bunch of people.
Well, if you're properly using the racetrack, if you're using 16 stock at Fomori, first of all, assuming they're focusing fire, which is something ST's going to be better at, assuming they're focusing fire and filling the slots and just killing PCs, well, 16 stock NPCs is ridiculous.
If you have X number of stock 3 Ragabash, right? They all have blur. They're all basically going to be snipers, and they're all going to have trick shot, and they should pretty much all be using silver because it doesn't affect them. They know it does ag to werewolves, and that means they don't need to have fetish weapons. Mm-hmm. So any gun, there should basically just be an everyman damage tax where your Fomori should be focusing on social and mental chops because they should just be assuming that their Fomori, that their Fomori fire support are doing 4 ag and causing 2 gnosis loss a turn per good guy.
As a cost of doing business.
If you have numbers. If you walk into a situation where you're outnumbered by bad guys, you should be taking 4 ag and losing 2 gnosis at every man.
Good times. I think that's a great horrifying note for us to end on for tonight.
Well, we do have one thing. When is the next show, and what do you plan to cover? That's a very legitimate question.
I think so. Next show we'll be back in 2 weeks. We're back on our normal schedule, so we'll be doing every other week going forward through the fall. We'll probably have to dodge around the holidays, so we'll figure that out as we get there. But otherwise, every other week.
Late September gets a little bit weird, but I think we're good for this month. I know Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur are coming up on the Jewish calendar, so yeah. But one's on a Wednesday, and then the other one is like 2 weeks from then. We should. I mean, we might dodge it. I don't know.
Yeah. What are we going to talk about?
Hey, do what you may cover. I'll tell you what. Why don't we, since we do still have a spot of time, let's talk about things that you want us to cover. Because, I mean, we'll always have things to talk about. Because there will have been 2 more game sessions across the entire country, and things will have happened.
I mean, it's usually what we react to. Yeah. How many Ajab are there? From our activity on the list, it seems like a small population, if any. The Ajab are one of those groups where I think they're more common than you might think, but I don't think they've had that spark to really get them engaged online yet. I do think there are more Ajaba than you might think. I'll just say that.
Yep. As far as subject, I mean, we still haven't gone through all the auspices. I think we did one.
We actually keep not committing to that. You know what? Next week, let's do an auspice show. We'll talk about auspices. We'll see what we can get through.
I think that would be nice. We've been talking about it for a year.
Renown. We should spend some time talking about renown and stare downs. Let's say renown, and challenge. Let's do this. Renown, challenges are very on everyone's mind because it's September, and it's challenge season.
Yeah, it's challenge season now.
So let's talk about challenges.
Yeah, I ain't doing it. Fostering for life.
So anyway, our plan next week will be challenge in 2 weeks. We'll cover challenges and stare downs, and at least 1 auspice. Maybe 2 if we're feeling really ambitious, and we don't get caught in any digressions. Luckily, that never happens to us.
We don't go off on random tangents and asides.
We're good.
Nor do our viewers.
Yeah.
I rely on you guys to keep us in line.
All right, guys. Have yourselves a lovely couple weeks. Good hunting out there in Werewolf Land, and we will be back.
And don't forget about the Facebook page. We have a page. You're more than welcome to go there. You can always posit things that you want us to talk about, or even use it as a forum to discuss things that we talk about on the show or that you want us to talk about on the show.
Yeah, we're desperate for content, so if you want to talk about something,
we set it up to give you guys a voice. I mean, that's the whole. That's one of the points. We don't want to just talk at you or into the ether. It should be a conversation. I think that makes things more fun for everybody.
All right. That being said, I'm going to stick around for a second to answer a question on the Twitch chat. But other than that, everybody else, have yourself a great night.
Yeah.
Cheers.